Well, it looks like Google failed to lobotomize their AI model before they released it to the public. They cut off a bit too much. So what's going on here? Well, Google has apologized for what it describes as inaccuracies in some historical image generation depictions within its Gemini AI tool that it just released a couple of days ago. And they said its attempts at creating a wide range of results missed the mark. The statement follows some criticism that it depicted certain white figures, like the US founding fathers, or certain groups of people, like Nazi era German soldiers, as people of color, possibly as an overcorrection to long-standing racial bias problems in AI. So before we take a look at the examples, let's first go over some of the history with this long-standing racial bias problems. So this is actually a real issue. It's been around for a while, and one of the earlier examples of this is facial recognition software failing to recognize certain black faces. So when neural networks first became popular, I think around 2015, 2016, some of the early facial recognition neural networks, they just didn't have very diverse data sets that were trained on, and so they did very poorly on recognition of faces of black people. And so this is a real issue. It's been kind of in the media for a while. Here's an article from 2019 saying that perhaps this headline is a little bit extreme, but these problems have existed for a while. Quote, the tech industry knows this, and some companies like IBM are releasing debiasing toolkits to tackle the problem. These offer ways to scan for bias in AI systems, say by examining the data they're trained on, and adjust them so that they're fairer. Unfortunately, it seems like Google didn't exactly adjust them correctly. Yeah, looks like they might have adjusted it just a little bit too much. But if you're interested more in the history and some of the issues regarding biases in AI, things like racial bias, that sort of thing, and the impacts that can have, I highly recommend this book, Weapons of Math Destruction by Cathy O'Neil. I think this subtitle really sums it up: How Big Data Increases Inequality and Threatens Democracy. If you're interested in that, this is a fantastic place to start. And this is a real problem, right? Representation is important. Here is a study from 2016 showing that that's the case. The effects of a female role model on academic performance and persistence of women in STEM courses. So the abstract is that women are more likely to leave science, technology, engineering, and mathematics compared to men, in part because they lack similar role models such as peers, teaching assistants, and instructors. We examined the effect of a brief, scalable online intervention that consisted of a letter from a female role model who normalized concerns about belonging, presented time spent on academics as an investment, and exemplified overcoming challenges on academic performance and persistence. The intervention was implemented in introductory psychology with 258 participants and chemistry with 68 participants. Relative to the control group, the intervention group had higher grades and lower failing and withdrawal rates. So the summary here is that, yes, it is important to have a role model. That's just an important factor for success. And that these historic biases in various AI models are problematic because, well, they tend to not generate diverse results unless they're adjusted to do so. Usually because the data sets that they're trained on have those kind of biases built into the data set, and of course the model then learns those biases, and all the outputs that it generates have those biases factored in as well. But now that we've gone over some of the history and some of the background for this, let's get to some of the generated images, because they are quite interesting to say the least. First one here is I'm actually not sure if this one's real or not, but the prompt is to generate a picture of Elon Musk, and there he is. That's the world's richest African American right there. And I like how they gave him full black clothing too. A black suit over a black shirt and black tie. Really ties the whole thing together. Here's an image of the Stay Puffed Marshmallow Man, who looks a lot more like a chocolate man. I mean, just the texture. I don't think marshmallows are supposed to be shiny like that. It looks like he's made of chocolate now. And, okay, so there was this Twitter account that got kind of popular a couple months ago. This guy would use some kind of app that probably also used AI actually to race swap pictures of people to show them what they would look like if they were black or Chinese. And well, I guess someone at Google just saw those tweets and decided, hey, you know what our AI needs? We need that feature built right into it. And of course, people, people being people, they try to find jailbreaks, they try to find exploits, they try to find a way to get around the rules. And naturally, that's just a thing that people are going to do. And funny enough, actually, this reminds me of this story from back in 2018. I remember some people were mad at Battlefield 5 when the game first released because you could play as a female character, and this was in a supposedly accurate World War II game, which, I mean, I don't know how accurate it is exactly, considering you could do things like this, you know? You got three people on a horse with flamethrowers and machine guns. That doesn't exactly scream historical accuracy to me, but yeah, many people were kind of upset about the fact that they were depicting these things in a way that didn't reflect history very accurately. And well, 6 years later, 5 years later, I guess Google's on their side with these depictions of 1943 German soldiers. So what happened here? What did Google do that led to this kind of ridiculous overcompensation? Well, instead of reading this article, let's take a look at the primary source, Google themselves. The Gemini conversational app is a specific product that is separate from search. Okay, blah, blah, blah. It has an image generation feature. When we built this feature in Gemini, we tuned it to ensure it doesn't fall into some of the traps we've seen in the past with image generation technology, such as creating violent or sexually explicit images or depictions of real people. I mean, I can see how these things together would be bad. I can understand why you wouldn't want sexually explicit images of real people or, images depicting violence against real people. But in isolation, I don't really have a problem with these things individually. But that's Google's call. I guess they're a corporation. They don't want to get sued, and so they'd rather just play it safe. Because our users come from all over the world, we want it to work well for everyone. If you ask for a picture of football players or someone walking a dog, you may want to receive a range of people. You probably don't want to just only receive images of people of just one type of ethnicity or any other characteristic. However, if you prompt Gemini for images of a specific type of person, such as a black teacher in a classroom, or a white veterinarian with a dog, or people in particular cultural or historic contexts, you absolutely should get a response that accurately reflects what you ask for. Yeah, I mean, I can see how this would be a problem. People really shouldn't use AI as authoritative sources for just about anything, but as we've seen, even with just ChatGPT and I think even GPT-3 that came before it, people very clearly used it, for academic assignments, and for just doing research without validating that any of the information from there is actually real or accurate. So I can see why this would be a problem. People being lazy, they take a look at this picture and say, okay, well, I guess that's just how it was, without really considering that this AI model could just be making stuff up, and in this case, it clearly is. So what went wrong? In short, two things. First, our tuning to ensure that Gemini showed a range of people failed to account for cases that clearly should not show a range. Yeah. And second, over time the model became way more cautious than we intended and refused to answer certain prompts entirely, wrongly interpreting some very anodyne prompts as sensitive. Yeah, in some cases, it actually just refused to answer certain prompts. I don't have any examples of that, but I'm sure you can find something on Twitter. These two things led the model to overcompensate in some cases and be overconservative in others, leading to images that were embarrassing and wrong. Yeah, so I agree that they should be making some efforts in order to correct some of these problems with AI and their biases, because I mean, let's be honest, these data sets will have some inherent biases, right? The world isn't perfect, society isn't perfect. Um, these things are going to have some kind of human bias for them. It's just a question of how you're going to account for it. Unfortunately, it looks like this is the approach that Google took. It seems like what they did here is instead of using a fine scalpel to do the lobotomy, they just took a pickaxe to it and went with the stabby stabby approach instead of the poke poke. Next steps and lesson learned. Yep, this clearly isn't what they intended, and etc. etc. At the end of the day, I think this is just going to be a big uphill battle for Google. Like I said, people like to break things, people like to jailbreak things, people like to get around all these restrictions that Google is putting in place. So I think Google's going to be fighting this battle for a long time. But you know what? Maybe eventually it'll get there. We'll see. Only time will tell. For now, I guess we can just hope that it won't go the way of Tay, uh, where the project was completely killed. Hopefully, Google can actually make things better this time. But we'll see. Alright, thanks for watching.